Hey friends, Dean here with some exciting news to share. You can now buy us a coffee. That's right. You can help support independent content creators like us by becoming a member of the 3324 Green Room at buymeacoffee.com/3324. Our episodes will always be free and that will not change, but your support at buymeacoffee.com/3324 will help us continue to bring you the best in music and movie podcasting, in our humble opinion. As a Green Room supporter, you'll not only have our undying gratitude, but you'll also be able to vote on which episodes we record and receive other perks for as low as $3 per month. That's the price of a cup of coffee. There's absolutely no obligation, and nothing about the show will change. It's not going behind a paywall. Go to buymeacoffee.com/3324 for all the details. The link will be in the show notes of every episode as well. We'll see you in the Green Room. In this episode, we're going to take you out to sunny Hawthorne, California, where three brothers... We're going to do that over again. In this episode, we're going to take you out to sunny Hawthorne, California, where three brothers, their cousin, and a good friend created a literal wave of fun as we celebrate the surfing sounds of the Beach Boys. We'll be right back.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Fun. I think that's a good kind of precursor to this episode, right?
Yep.
We always have fun.
We do. Wearing the swag tonight. What do you got?
The swag. I got the can koozie.
He's got the koozie. I got the shirt. What do you got on your shirt? It's
the Avett Brothers. Going to see them next month.
Oh, where?
It's not called the Yale Bowl, but it's up near Yale University. And they have a new album coming out next month too. So
I've yet to go.
A couple of new songs. Yeah, gotta go. I've seen Tedeschi Trucks twice. I've seen your favorite group a couple of times. You can at least go.
Yeah.
Oh, you've seen the Avett Brothers. What are you talking about? You saw them with me.
That one time, the Capitol.
Dude,
yes, you're right.
You weren't dosed on LSD. I could tell you. So I don't know why I don't remember that.
I was still recovering from the Dylan show.
That's true.
No,
that was Jack Johnson. That was a different.
No, we did Jack Johnson, and then we did. No, we didn't do.
No, because I did Jack Johnson, Bob Dylan, and then I did Dawes the next day.
Okay, that's right. Okay,
Avett Brothers was a different. You were up for something else.
Did I actually come up that many times to see you?
Not really. Those are the only two times. Sorry to out you.
All right. But anyway, let's get.
Eric's travel habits. You can find him on Twitter or currently known as X. You can track his travel habits there.
See, that's the thing. I mean, you're bringing up summer, fun. So I'm trying to figure, I'm just trying to plan my summer out. So I got to find out what's going on.
You can come on up and there's always good concerts during the summer up here. There's a lot of great venues nearby, so it's good. If you're joining us for the first time, we will get to the Beach Boys. Don't worry about it. They're waiting in the green room. We've got them ready. But for now, do me a favor. Go ahead if you're listening on Spotify, whatever the podcast platform is. Go ahead and follow us. That would be great. That would be so awesome because this way you get to a notification each week when something new comes out. You don't have to worry. It's kind of neat on Spotify. You get a little dot next to the 3324 podcast logo to let you know that there's something new there, and then you can go to it, say, this is for me, I'm in, or not right now, or maybe I'll get to it, and you can make the choice. And if you like it, go ahead and give us a review, too. If you're able to give us stars, give us as many stars as possible. If you want to tap a little review, that would be great, too. That would be just awesome. We would appreciate it. So, and new episodes come out. Yep. New episodes come out each and every Thursday. Eric and I were just patting each other on the back. I was patting myself. He was patting himself. We don't miss a week.
No,
I'm just going to put it out there.
You say it every time at the end of every episode. We're going to be here. I'm glued to the couch.
Glued to the couch. I'm glued to my green IKEA
back.
Glued to my green IKEA chair. But that's the beautiful thing is you can count on us. We're going to be here each and every week for you with top fives, music, all good fun stuff. And we've got a lot of great stuff coming up. So I emailed Eric and I'm like, Surfing Sounds of the Beach Boys.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like, what? Like, I knew there might be some like, well, why? Maybe why?
Some pushback?
No, not pushback, but what? Like, what do you mean exactly? Right?
Yeah.
Like what? And maybe kind of why? Right? Was there?
Yes.
You didn't really ask me. You didn't really ask me why.
Well,
but
no, I'll tell you. I'll tell you why. Because you pointed out anything before Pet Sounds.
Yes,
was free game.
Yes,
Pet Sounds came out in 1966. So we're talking about some of the early stuff. We're talking like early days of the Beach Boys, the surfing, the cars, all that kind. Which, by my own admission, I to be perfectly honest with you, I know the hits.
Yeah,
but I never actually dived into the early albums, like in full.
Yeah.
So I spent as much time as I could in the last few days just to kind of dive in and just to kind of, really immerse myself in those early recordings. And there's some real great stuff that I never,
Yeah, not all of it is solid gold because, and we'll get into it. I think the reason why I wanted to do this also is because every time Eric and I, when we have an episode and the Beach Boys or Brian Wilson comes up, we immediately we go to Pet Sounds. We always talk about Pet Sounds. We talk about the production.
Yeah.
There was a lot more to the Beach Boys. There's a Beach Boys post Pet Sounds, which is a totally different thing. It's a story of a totally different band in essence that had to change their sound without their leader. And then you've got everything before Pet Sounds, which is when they were just like literally 21, 22 years old. 1962. So they were formed pre-Beatlemania, pre-British invasion. And they were one of the few American bands that survived the British invasion. A lot of bands got kind of caught in the wash and just couldn't keep up with it. Yeah. And I think it's important to kind of celebrate. Also, summer is coming. Summer's on the way, and there's nothing better than good Beach Boys music to kind of. I mean, they are the sounds of summer. They truly are. I think it's universal at this point. In 2017, the All Music Database, which is an internet site, their database listed the Beach Boys as the 6th most cited artist influence. They were the 6th highest cited artist influence from other bands and things that were influenced. So they're highly influential. 2021, the Ultimate Classic Rock website ranked them the top American band of all time.
That's a great site, by the way. Love
that. And I don't think you'd be hard pressed. Somebody would say Aerosmith might be the greatest. Aerosmith is the top selling, I think, American band of all time. I think they've sold the most amount of records.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I got to be in a certain mood to listen to Aerosmith. The Beach Boys, you can put on anything that we're going to talk about.
Sure.
And again,
I agree.
They were the purveyors of the California dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the Beatles, who were their contemporaries. The Beach Boys sang about very specific things up until Pet Sounds, right? It was cars, girls, and surfing. And that was pretty much the only material that they sang about. So it's like, well, that must be kind of, I could see why the Beatles would be better then or that. Well, that doesn't tell you the whole story.
Yeah.
The subject matter, what isn't the point? I mean, it was back then because they had created this myth of this surfing culture and cars and how great it is out in California. But what the difference is how the band grew and more so the vocal stuff. So it's not about the lyrical content, but it's about what they did with the lyrical content, right? Would you agree? It's not about it is about Surfing USA, but that's the rapper that the production comes in and the vocals come in. And that's where the Beatles I don't think could match the Beach Boys.
Well, like you say, I mean, it's the fact that they were a very niche type of band, before I guess niche was even a niche. Be a thing. Could be a thing, right? I mean, you're very specific, like you say, but the culture did exist. right? I mean, there were people, I mean, that, it's not like it's a fantasy. People worked on their cars, we're building hot rods and listening to the Beach Boys as they were doing it, surfing and of course, dating was a big thing, falling in love and hanging out on the beach and all those things. Yeah. I mean, creating that setting, and that's what sold.
This lifestyle that they were purveying, even though they didn't surf, none of them surfed except for Dennis a little bit. I don't know that they were all car people, but they were, like I said, they were the purveyors of this idealized lifestyle that was out on the West Coast. I don't want to hear the Beatles singing about how rainy it is in Liverpool. So there's the contrast, right? Like the Beatles don't have that kind of material to go to, but whereas the Beach Boys stumbled upon this combination of their harmonies and the lifestyle of Southern California that made them kind of fall
it almost feels like, the whole aesthetic of the music, the building of that music aesthetic of what they did. It almost kind of coincides with the lifestyle, though. I mean, you can't really harmonize and, if it's not a feel good type of thing. Now, I'm going to point out that most of the tracks, most of the songs that I prefer are probably the slower tracks, the more sort of hard on the sleeve that Brian Wilson started developing over time. He became a better songwriter. Those are my preferred things. So I almost kind of look at it like you might like some of this, like the more poppy, like fast paced kind of thing, which is like daytime on the beach. We're having a great time in the sun. Me, I'm sunset.
Campfire.
Right. The campfire, the sun's going down, and now it's time to kind of lay back and just
surfer girl.
Chill out to the, and it works. I think both work so well and so hand in hand that it's just, and that's the thing about Brian Wilson. He just kind of got so good at that. Yeah. At that mindset,
it creates this whole thing, this whole persona, as it were, of California as this living thing of nights on the beach by the fire, or nights down at the drive-in in your car, and days when you're surfing and trying to be the best surfer or create a car club and stuff like that. Right. Little history from October 1962 to July of 1965. The Beach Boys released 8 albums. None of them were compilations. And there was a Christmas album in there that I didn't count. Yes. So not counting. So there was actually 9 albums of original music.
That's amazing.
No compilations like the Beatles. Now, here's the flip side of it is if you're going to dive into some of this early Beach Boy stuff, there's a lot of covers. They were doing a lot of surfing covers of instrumentals. So they were kind of in that lane and working their way through some of that stuff and doing covers of other stuff like Why Do Fools Fall in Love and Louie Louie.
Like, sort of
they were kind of doing that kind of party band stuff that they were doing. But in each one of those albums, you can start to see some growth. You can start to see the totally vocals. Agree. Yeah, if you listen to the first album, the vocals are there, but they're loosey goosey. There's something there, but it's not earth shattering. Even Brian Wilson's solo vocals. I was listening to one of the first albums. I'm like, it's kind of unsure of himself almost. He didn't have that confidence, because he had always been ridiculed about his falsetto. So he was always a little self-conscious about it. So on those early first 2 albums or first album, it's a little tentative. They were also one of the first bands to start to exert control in the studio. And that's what set them apart from the Beatles as well, is by the second album, Brian Wilson was taking over producing duties. And that doesn't normally happen. Usually the record label says, here's, like they did with the Beatles. These guys were both on Capitol. Beatles were on Capitol in the States. They were on Parlophone in the UK. But here's your producer. Shake hands. You may not have ever met him before, but this is the guy that's going to work on your stuff.
Right.
That's what happened with the Beatles, and it worked out. George Martin was a good conduit for the Beatles, but the Beatles never really produced themselves. The difference is Brian Wilson had sounds in his head or visions of what the music what should sound like, and it seemed like only he was the only one that could be in control of that and create it, because he knew what it needed to sound like and maybe not able to explain it.
You talk about a conduit. That's the ultimate, instead of just like somebody coming in and having, trained classical music experience, which is George Martin. He produced comedy albums for God's sake. I mean, and he comes in, with a more classical approach, and yet he helped create some of the greatest music of all time. But it is a big, when you consider what Brian was able to achieve. By himself. And those early albums, yes, they're very repetitive. There's a lot of songs that sound exactly the same. So no, not one. I would argue that probably the first 3 albums or so, not every track is great. It's not a complete. These albums aren't brilliant all the way through. No. But there's at least 2 or 3 tracks that you could definitely sort of pick off the vine and just add, and became some of the most timeless music.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of that stuff, like I said, is covers of surf music, of instrumental surf music, and Papa Wow Mau, stuff like that. So there's a lot of that. Right? Yeah, a lot of that party stuff is in there. But like I said, but you start to track the growth of Brian throughout this thing. They also had 7 top 10 singles between April of 1963 and November of 1964. So in about the span of a year and a half, they had 7 top 10 singles. They were just with 8 albums. I mean, they were just cranking out music, literally just kind of boom, 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 like 8 albums in 3 years.
Yeah.
Less than 3 years, October of 62 to July of 65. That's less than 3 years. It's about 2.5 years. They released 8 albums. So a lot, it's easy when a lot of it is covers. But as it went on, those covers became less and less. Mike Love and Brian Wilson started to kind of become more confident as songwriters, kind of understand the material that they were writing. Also, they had to understand what they were trying to get across with the cars. And, they realized like not everybody in the USA or most of the Midwest has no water near them. So we need to start writing songs about cars, so you get their 4th album was called Little Deuce Coupe. Their 5th album was Shut Down Volume 2. Yeah. And those are just those are just songs about cars on those albums, but they're taking that material. It doesn't make a difference. They could be reading the menu at a pizzeria. It doesn't make a difference. It's what they're doing with the material that is what makes the Beach Boys so compelling. This could be easily dismissed as brainless pop music, and it is pop music. But there's something very special going on underneath, and that's why it's easy to take this stuff for granted when you hear it on like oldies. When you hear fun, it's like, oh, the Beach Boys, yeah. Like no, there was a lot of other stuff. Brian Wilson was becoming an architect of music, of production, and of vocals, and that's the thing. And so we want to kind of, I guess, talk about some of the songs and that maybe embody that for us from this early stuff. So we took everything, we kind of opened it up from anything before 1966 was fair game. And I think for me, the Beach Boys music is able to hit me at an emotional level. I love the Beatles, but I never get really emotional listening to it. Maybe listening to the End of Abbey Road, perhaps, but Brian's voice and those arrangements, that's what can reach me. Is that, are you kind of in that?
I agree. I mean, you could admire the hell out of the Beatles. Everybody has to, you don't have to love the Beatles to at least respect the legacy that they've created. And, but I totally agree. There are very, very few songs that the Beatles have done that, will put me in that place. But Brian, on the other hand,
can do it with one vocal.
With one, just the way he approaches it, the way there's almost a childlike wonder,
naivete, innocence
to his approach. Is it the innocence, and yet he comes out with the most brilliant and poignant, and even in the early stuff, they're like In My Room, for example, which is one of my all-time favorite songs ever. It's not, it's definitely one of his, but it's just, that speaks to me as, a kid growing up. And that's a song that I could totally relate to as a sort of introvert, like very shy, very, in my early years as a youth. And that's a song that speaks to me even today. That I could, sometimes you just want to go there. You just want to go back to that room.
Yeah.
And just, cower in a corner, right? And just, forget
about everything.
And I really feel like Brian knew how to take us there, And And the funny thing,
do my dreaming, do my scheming, do my sighing and my crying. It's
God,
he was able to kind of and back then guys weren't supposed to be that sensitive. It was supposed to, you're supposed to be kind of like the big man, right? The big man with the car and the big man with the surfboard.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of I've got real concerns sometimes, and I I need a place where I can go, and kind of away from everything.
Right.
And be that way without having to worry about it. So it's his voice. It's not Mike Love. It's not any of the other ones. Maybe Carl to a lesser degree, but it's Brian Wilson's voice that can soar and draw out things. He was so masterful at it. The weird thing about a lot of these Beach Boys albums is they tried their hand at comedy. They would do these like little skits. Did you listen to any of them? And it was so contrived. They were so contrived. They're kind of like ranking on each other and making fun of the way that like Mike Love sings, like plugging their nose and.
Yeah,
and it was like Brian Wilson was very much into that. He had wanted to do a comedy or a humor, an album of comedy or humor. It just is very stilted. It does not. Back then, it was probably corny, so it's even cornier now. It doesn't.
Yeah, they didn't quite have the knack like the Beatles.
It was too. It was too scripted. It was too. They were trying to do it.
Yeah.
Like let's put a mic and let's put a mic in front of everybody and let's say some funny things.
Just goofy.
It's like, it doesn't, it's like, it didn't really work.
And the Beatles did it. They were, there was something about British humor, that dry sort of
very aloof. Very aloof,
sarcastic, and they did it very, very well. I mean, Hard Day's Night. I mean, you watch that movie. I love it.
It's like, what the hell is going on here? Like it's just like you have to like be paying attention to catch. To catch a lot of the stuff, whereas this was kind of a little bit more ham-fisted,
and just not
didn't hit the mark.
Right. You might as well be watching. You might as well be watching like the Partridge Family or something like that. Like those
exactly.
early, something like that. Yeah.
Either leave it off or replace it with a song. It's okay.
Right.
It was like weird stuff, but I think the classic. Maybe we'll kind of take turns, kind of just throwing a song out there. But there was one song that got them in trouble pretty straight away because they had basically copied Chuck Berry. And that didn't last too long before Chuck Berry with Surfing USA kind of got them in trouble. It's basically, it is a direct rewrite of Sweet Little 16. And they basically said that though. Brian's like, I want to, someone said you should kind of rewrite Sweet Little 16, but with surfing destinations. And it's like, oh, that's probably a good idea. So he talked to his friend, since he doesn't surf, he talked to his friend and said, hey, why don't you give me a list of surfing things? And that's where you got San Onofre and La Jolla and Trestles and all those different name check destinations that went into Surfing USA. I love Surfing USA. Just again, that production is tight, and again, this is all about vocals and backing vocals. This is less about instrumentation until we got later on, like 1965, when the Wrecking Crew really kind of started to come in and the ideas grew. These are very simple arrangements, kind of very Chuck Berry-ish with the guitar and the kind of chugging guitar. But I think Surfing USA is a good place to kind of start. That epitomizes kind of everything for me. I think that that would be the opening track for
it's just that opening riff. I mean, it's just again, but it's very tinny. It's very, it's not as warm as the Chuck Berry, the way he plays it, but it's just. But yeah, you could tell right away what they're doing. But I see it as an homage. I see it as like you say, different lyrics, different ideas, different place. It's taking you to a certain place, but I'm a fan of rock and roll, and let's face it, rock and roll only there are only so many chords you can play, and I think that I think that lends itself to the genius of Brian Wilson over time, how he was able to take some those simplistic things and just sort of and make something grand out of it, and and build on those ideas and build on those chords and just sort of but you have to start somewhere. Everybody covers something, in the early, so I don't blame them for doing a lot of covers. In fact, I think it's kind of bold that they did a cover of
Misirlou. Yeah.
Like Dick Dale. I mean, come on, that's wow. Like I had no idea they ever did that.
They also did "Let's Go Trippin'" by Dick Dale. I mean, these weren't perfect or great cover. I mean, they were, these guys were young musicians, so they were self-taught. So these weren't like trained musicians, and they didn't have the benefit of the Beatles, where the Beatles toured incessantly for years before they became the Beatles. So by the time they got into the studio, they were like ready, steady, go.
Right.
Whereas the Beach Boys kind of formed and then got a contract. And started making music. So they were kind of amateur musicians at the beginning. Carl Wilson wasn't a great guitarist. He was capable. Al Jardine, he was going to go be a dentist. He actually left the Beach Boys. He was going to become a dentist, and then he came back. So this was definitely not this was definitely not like a, they didn't seem maybe too realistic about the prospects, but they developed into it. Whereas the Beatles kind of almost came out fully formed. When they got into the studio, it's like they were the Beatles already.
Yeah,
there was no learning curve. But for the Beach Boys, you see that a little bit more when you listen to this early stuff. They're trying to figure this stuff out and kind of do the best they can with it. But again, that's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is not the instrumentation; it's the vocalizations. So what's a song that you have that kind of? We wrote a bunch down. Maybe we'll put them into a playlist. Although you can find playlists for days, but maybe ours might.
Well, I pretty much. I think what really the albums that really struck gold for me. I'll be honest. The first couple of albums didn't really do it for me, as we pointed out. They were, a lot of covers, a lot of the surfing. But I think the album that kind of started getting things going was Shutdown, Volume 2. And of course, Warmth of the Sun. I mean, come on, like we talked about that song before.
Yep.
And
we can talk about it. We can talk about it. We can't ever talk about it too much.
And that is just
it's on my list too.
An absolute gem.
It'll tear your heart out.
Absolutely. And I don't think it's one of their biggest. It's not really one of their biggest hits, is it?
Not a hit at all, really.
And it's one of their finest. Absolute finest. Yeah. I'll put that, with the later stuff. I mean, that is, right up there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You catch the right time of day, like early evening, the sun is going down. And if you just catch the right mood and, like we said, this made an appearance in our top 5 harmony, songs episodes. I picked it. And I don't know if I told the story then, but I probably did, but The Warmth of the Sun, the lyrical content it's not about JFK, but it's inspired by the assassination of JFK that had happened. And Brian and Mike were kind of feeling like, wow, what do we, everything seems hopeless. And this song, The Warmth of the Sun, came out of it. And it's just it's gorgeous.
It is. And they keep it at such an even keel. Like Brian's, falsetto is probably the harshest thing about the song. Right. As it starts out, but then, you have that even sort of, that low hum of the harmonies
just in the back.
It really gives you the impression that the sun is kind of setting, and it's just, it is that kind of time of day. And they really capture that,
absolutely,
that mood. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, absolutely. Yeah. It's a brilliant track. So, yep.
Let me see. I think I have stuff from earlier albums too. I like some of the other like from Surfer Girl, which was their second album was Surfer Girl. No, there's the third guy. No. Okay. This is going to be confusing. Their first album was Surfin' Safari. Their second album was Surfin' USA. Their third album was Surfer Girl. Thank God they got off of using surf for
Yeah.
But that kind of tells you where they were in. And then the next two albums were Cars, were Little Deuce Coupe Shutdown. From Surfer Girl, Catch a Wave. It's
Okay.
just a fun, quirky song, but again, it's got some great it's got a good Mike and Brian vocal. So Mike kind of handles like the main verses, and then it's almost like a call and response, and then Brian will have some of the lines after it. And it's just, again, it epitomizes the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about, plain and simple. But the vocalizations on that is, you can feel them. Their third album in, you can feel them getting tighter. You can kind of feel like they're honing in on they kind of know what the secret sauce is going to be, and it's going to be them and less the stuff surrounding them. But I went with Catch a Wave.
That's a great one. Yeah, it is a great one. Yeah. Again, off of Shutdown 2, of course, Don't Worry Baby is as solid as you can get. I mean, and it's interesting to note that of all the early hits, that they could have chosen, for when they did the Love and Mercy movie about Brian, they picked this song, and then of course there's only 3 real Beach Boys songs on the soundtrack, and it's this one, God Only Knows, of course, and then of course Good Vibrations. So, which it's obviously is apropos, but why Don't Worry Baby of all things, that's, but I realize that it's just such a great, it has that early feel. It has that early sort of almost, you could almost argue that this could be like a doo-wop type of song. Like, there's like Brian Wilson's a fan of that kind of thing too, the street corner thing. But yet,
he was obsessed with "Be My Baby" by the Ronettes. That's what this is. He used to play. The story goes, he used to have a jukebox, and he just used to play "Be My Baby" over and over and over and over.
That makes sense.
And over again. Yeah. And Don't Worry Baby has a similar structure to it. And it's kind of his kind of version of it, and his homage to the Phil Spector. I mean, we know that he's, was a big acolyte of him. I was listening to Don't Worry Baby today. And again, I love doing this stuff because you start to listen, or you listen for different things. And I noticed on Don't Worry Baby, it's like, if you can make yourself not listen to the instrumentation, because it's very sparse anyway. The song is actually almost all backing and lead vocals. Like, the backing vocals are pretty much there's very few times when the backing vocals actually stop. Like, they start at the beginning, and they kind of go through, even when Brian is singing the verses. Those backing vocals are still going through the whole song, and it's basically a song with lead vocal and backing vocals, and the instrumentation is very non-essential to the song. Actually,
it's not, and I would love to hear an acapella, and that's where that's where I kind of the doo-wop thing comes into play for me.
Yep.
You definitely hear this on somebody on a street corner doing, if they had the chops. But yeah, it's another classic, Yeah. And, so.
Yeah. His just his soaring falsetto again, nothing like it. I mean, Frankie Valli and Luke Christie would be the closest. McCartney's falsetto. Yeah. McCartney's falsetto I don't think could be sustained. He has a good falsetto for like, ooh, that kind of stuff. But Brian could just go up into the clouds and just sit on top of a cloud.
Well, I mean, to sing an entire melody and to sing, in a falsetto is not easy to do. Like you pointed out, I mean, people can go high and not sustain it, but to actually carry a tune the whole way through in that voice is it's rough. It's rough.
I've got a companion piece to this, and I'll throw a little trivia your way. Fleetwood Mac has put down on recording. They've done a cover of a Beach Boys song.
Yes, I know where you're going.
You know which one it is?
Farmer's Daughter.
Farmer's Daughter.
Yeah.
They did. It's on Fleetwood Mac Live, so it's not actually a studio version, but it's them doing it. The original Farmer's Daughter, again, it's the same type of thing. It's like all vocals.
Yes.
Like you don't need like a lot of instrumentation because it's not the point. And Farmer's Daughter, kind of a quirky song. You know, he kind of gets hurt or something and he ends up on the farm, and I'm going to stay here for a little bit and I'll get better. You know, thank you, Farmer's Daughter. It's not as tawdry as you'd think it would be. It's actually quite innocent, the song.
I actually think there's some Smile vibes in there in that song. Some early some like the proto, some ideas of flow in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely has a feel to it. It's got like this self-contained feel to it, and it's not about this. It's not about surfing cars or any of that kind of stuff. It's just this kind of standalone. But you can kind of see with Farmer's Daughter where the strengths of the Beach Boys are in like Don't Worry Baby and Farmer's Daughter. I think we'll make a playlist because I think this is good stuff. A lot of this is hits, but there's a lot of stuff that I think casual listeners might want to listen to just to get we're not going to go deep. We're not going deep cuts. We're good. Yeah. We're just going to go like one or two levels below the surface. And I think these will be nice songs to have on there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't mind going deep because some of the deep cuts are actually really, really some good gems. Like, for example, I'm going to go with the next one, the next album, and that's I love We'll Run Away. I think that's a great track. And of course, the title track for All Summer Long is always
that's fun.
That's a fun song.
I have that written down as well.
I love that in American Graffiti. It's at the end credits of American Graffiti. Like, like that's one of my favorite, and it's so odd, but it's, I was around that time frame. So 62, 63 were, and it's just a great fun. So that's one of my favorite of the fun type of not surfing, not cars, but enjoying the summer. To me, that's their ultimate summer jam. I think I that might be
actually from that album Hushabye. Also, they didn't write it, but it's a cover. Since you're talking about like what the fun songs are, I have fun on my list. And that's another opener. That's like you got to be in your car. That's what it's about. It's like taking she takes her father's car. And she'll have fun till her daddy takes the T-Bird away. It's just, again, they really knew how to like paint these. They lyrically, they painted great pictures. You were able to visualize this kind of stuff. You were able to visualize being at the beach. Even if you never surfed, you can, catch a wave. You can visualize surfing, so they really had their finger on the pulse of getting this California dream out to the rest of America and then to the world, right? Because in England and these other countries, it's not really, I mean, they may surf now, but who knows, back then it was basically, Hawaii and a lot of the, tropical islands and tropical areas that surfing was in. So fun is that's a non-surfing song, and it's very emblematic, and it's one of their big hits that everybody knows. Big one.
Yeah. So now we're moving on to Lindsey Buckingham's. I guess it's his favorite record, right? Today,
Beach Boys. Today, it's one of my favorites too.
This is where we really see the maturity in Brian. I think, especially, absolutely. And I totally agree with Lindsey's assessment of side 2, especially. Because that's some of my favorite stuff. Side 1, I love When I Grow Up to Be a Man.
Yep.
I always like that song, but Please Let Me Wonder and She Knows Me Too Well. Oh, those are killer, man. Those are just, really like now we're starting with the dating thing and falling in love and just, kind of going there.
The introspection.
Yeah.
They put out 2 albums in 1965. They put out this one. Then they put out Summer Days, Summer Nights. Because of this album, the Capitol was like, you got to go back to the cars and you got to go back to that stuff. And Brian Wilson didn't want to. He's like, it's not where my head is at. They did Summer Days and Summer Nights, or no, Beach Boys Today. No, this is Beach Boys Today. Yeah, Summer Days and Summer Nights came out right after it. And that kind of goes back to some of the amusement parks USA, Girl from New York City, Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
It's got California Girls on it. But yeah, Beach Boys Today was a lot of critics and a lot of music people cite Beach Boys Today, but not Summer Days and Summer Nights as the precursor to Pet Sounds. Like this was, you can feel that this stuff on Beach Boys Today, the stuff was coming together. The sounds are a lot similar. You can hear the Wrecking Crew. You can hear the bigger arrangements at the time as well. I'm going to throw one from this era, and it's not on any album. It was released as a single, and because it didn't do good as a single, Brian Wilson kept it off Pet Sounds, but it came out in '65, and it's called "The Little Girl I Once Knew." It's an amazing song. It is probably one of the best songs they've done. But it was so weird because it would have these stops in the middle of the song with nothing for like a second. And DJs didn't want to play because you can't have dead air, and the song would just stop literally for like a second and then pick up again. And it did it a couple times throughout the song, but it fits in with the Beach Boys Today sound and everything that was going on with the arrangements, but to the umpteenth level, like Little Girl I Once Knew was kind of like the prototype for Pet Sounds. It's a brilliant song. So we'll have to put,
I have to hear it.
Yeah. Enough people can't listen to it.
Yeah.
Enough people can't listen to it. It was actually, the working title was Carol K, because she
really?
Okay. Based on, it was originally called Carol K, but letter K, not Kaye, but after her. Summer Beach Boys Today had Help Me Rhonda. Oddly enough, Help Me Rhonda is on there, but it's a different version.
Yeah.
Than the number, Help Me Rhonda was one of the few number one hits that the Beach Boys actually had. But they did that a couple times. There's like different, like the single version of Help Me Rhonda is not the same version that's on the album on Beach Boys Today. The Beach Boys Today, it kind of has like an accordion in it. It kind of fades in and fades out. Like they do some weird production stuff with surging the instrumentation and then backing it off and do weird stuff on it. So it's a weird version of Help Me Rhonda. The single version is the one that and I heard another one too with like a banjo. There's like a third version of it that kind of has like a banjo with it too. So they were all for doing weird stuff. So
what's your preferred version of
the single, the popular version? Because it's got the full, it's got the full thing to it, the full force to it. What else you got?
I probably would prefer the album version. Yeah.
Well, since you're going with Beach Boys Today, Kiss Me Baby. Kiss Me Baby from that too. Oh my God. That's another one. His vocal.
There's a lot of good songs on this record.
Oh man. It's just this is, you could tell this is one of our gushing episodes. We haven't had a gushing episode in a while, so we were overdue. And this is just one of them, because this music is so easy to be taken for granted. I get that. It's easy to kind of look,
you can easily dismiss it. You can,
you got to look past it. You got to look past the veneer. Yeah. Look past the veneer of surf music and good time barbecue music. And that's what it is. That's the great thing about it, is it's infinitely listenable, but we challenge you to go a little further and pick up, listen to the vocals and really listen to how tight they are and how just great they sound. So what else you got? What do you got?
I think from the album right before Pet Sounds, Let 'Em Run Wild, I always liked.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite track off of that record. But yeah, I agree that, the amusement park thing going back, like they kind of get back to that kitschy sort of, niche type stuff. And, it didn't, was a disappointment to me compared to today.
It was like a step back.
Yeah.
Although I liked the song, The Girl from New York City. I kind of like it because it's kind of catchy.
I also kind of like Your Dream Comes True. I think it's kind of, has that same sort of heart in the sleeve feel, like kind of thing, as he's trying to, go back there, but it didn't quite have the same, I guess, the same flow or the same feeling. But that's pretty much it for me. For Let 'Em Run Wild, actually, Brian Wilson
he covered his own song on his 1998 album Imagination. He did Let 'Em Run Wild. He actually does I almost prefer it to the Beach Boys version. His new version. He actually does a really good version of Let 'Em Run Wild. Actually, I think I heard his version of Let 'Em Run Wild before I heard the Beach Boys version. So I was kind of used to that one.
Yeah.
And then I heard this one. I'm like, oh wow, it doesn't sound, the newer version is so much more polished. Not that, how much more can you get, but
sure.
It's off of Imagination, which is a good album. That was kind of his second or third comeback, perhaps. What do we got? Girls on the Beach, which is that from Little Deuce Coupe, or it was actually a song. It was actually a movie too called The Girls on the Beach, and they were in it. Remember back then they did all those beach, all those,
Annette
Funicello,
Yeah.
And they would have like the groups on, and there was a movie called The Girls on the Beach, and the Beach Boys did it. But it's a great song. It's again, it's all about the vocal. They just sell it, and I love it. And there's actually a video of them. There's a clip from the movie The Girls on the Beach, but it's such a good one. I love it.
It's such an odd, I have to admit, there are some things off of Party, which is not, it's an album of covers,
Yep.
for the most part, but it's interesting to hear them do the Beatles,
They did a lot of Beatles on that album.
Yes. Yeah. They do.
For some reason. And Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
I guess that's, that started coming into the consciousness of the time, and these artists were getting more and more popular, and this was, I think, up in the ante. I guess that this was the moment where Brian was like, "Okay, I gotta do something here."
Yeah,
I feel like this might have been like, let's get these covers out. Like, let's do some of this stuff and devote ourselves to this new music. That's exciting music that's on the scene. But that I almost feel like it's almost like a diving board. He's like leaping in, and then the next album would, of course, be Pet Sound. So that,
Party was like a thrown together.
Yeah.
Fun bit of trivia. That's not Brian Wilson singing in Barbara Ann.
It's not. Okay.
No, it's Dean Torrance from Jan and Dean.
Okay.
He could go just as high. All that high stuff, that's Dean Torrance from Jan and Dean doing it.
That's crazy.
Because Brian Wilson did them the favor by giving them Surf City, and he sang on Surf City. So Dean Torrance was around for those sessions, and that's him singing Barbara Ann, Dean Torrance. And you would never know. He sounds just like Brian, right?
It does. Yeah,
he goes right up there too. Very underrated, Dean Torrance, and he's got a nice first name.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Yep. Salt Lake City. Okay. That was another catchy one. I think is that off of Summer Days? Yeah, that's off of Summer Days and Summer Nights, Salt Lake City. Again, it's just another sometimes it's just ear candy. And I think Salt Lake City has the saxophone in it, just like Girl from New York City.
Yeah.
I don't know where the saxophone came from, but it's just kind of in there. But like I said, by this time they were working with the Wrecking Crew. Glenn Campbell was on that album as well. He was a member of the Wrecking Crew. Everyone thinks of Glenn Campbell as Rhinestone Cowboy, but he was a pretty prolific session man in the 60s before he struck out on his own. And when Brian had his nervous breakdown, Glenn Campbell was the first replacement. He stepped in. They gave him the Pendleton shirts. They gave him the outfit. And he took Brian's place on the road for a little bit as the Beach Boys until they got a hold of Brian Johnston. But he was the first replacement for Brian Wilson when.
Yeah, but he can't sing like Brian, though. I mean,
no, he can't. I don't even think he's in the same range.
Falsettos,
No. No, so he's like, by the time I get to Phoenix, you'll be rising. That kind of stuff, right? That's
I love that stuff, though. I love that, and I love Wichita Lineman. That's
just a lineman for the county. Yeah. I listen to that. So we got to do an episode of stuff that we listen to that's not rock and roll.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Oh, there's a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton. Like,
we'll call the episode "Get to Know Me." Wasn't that an SNL skit? Get to know me. Was that John Lovitz or something? Right? Get to know me.
Yes. You're right.
I'm going way back.
Acting.
So we should do that.
No, that would be great.
Top 5 things that we listen to that you would never expect.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have Wichita Lineman on there though. No, that's out because we already.
Okay.
We already gave it away.
All right. Well, there's others. There's others out there. Yeah.
What else you got?
That's pretty much what I cobbled together. I don't really have anything else. But yeah, I think as I pointed out, a lot of the songs that I chose were the slower tempo, sort of introspective, type of songs, more, and that's kind of my favorite place to be with Brian Wilson is in that zone, is when he really knows how to get into your soul, and just it's almost soulful. Like, you can almost point, you can almost say he's just as good as an Otis Redding or somebody like that, but doesn't sound like an R&B type of song, but it could, the fact that he can touch you in such a way that is
that he was
bring that emotion,
that he wasn't afraid to, again, like In My Room and the later stuff, that became very relationship heavy. It became like that kind of Kiss Me Baby and Good to My Baby, When I Grow Up to Be a Man, right? That's kind of about like, well, am I going to like the same things? Am I going to, what kind of a man am I going to be? Am I going to love my wife forever? Like what, all these kind of questions, almost like a sequel to In My Room. It's like, as I'm growing up, when I grow up to be a man. And then you kind of get Wouldn't It Be Nice from Pet Sounds, kind of like that next song, like in the trilogy of growing up. It's kind of like, In My Room when I'm a teenager, when I grow up to be a man and I get married, and then Wouldn't It Be Nice, to live together and be married.
Yeah.
But you see this person growing,
But the maturity of that is, now we're dealing with a song that is seemingly the same type of thing, but here we're dealing with, well, this is a cautionary tale. You need to be careful what you wish for, because he's there. I mean, this obviously Pet Sounds went there in that respect. So, but yeah, that progression of the maturity level of someone so young who sings like he could be in his 50s at this point, who's been through some shit, and to get that out there is better than some of this, anything the Beatles have done in that. I can't think of a single Beatles song that has that same,
maybe in My Life, maybe
like
that, that might be the closest.
I mean, maybe Something, of course, it's a beautiful love song.
But it's not the vocal performance that does it there.
The level of a Don't Talk.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the most profound love songs ever written. And it's just him. It's just a vocal, which is amazing. Yeah.
What about California Girls? I think that's an opposite. For me, it's an opposite song, meaning for me, the good stuff in California Girls is the instrumentation. It's that opening. That's another precursor. Agree. It's less about the vocal, and it's more about the arrangement for California Girls. That one I don't listen to for the vocals. I listen to it for that beautiful opening. You feel like something's happening. It's those strange chords that kind of open up this song. And then it's that lonely keyboard, dun, 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 and then the song kicks in,
Yeah, you're gonna think this is funny, but I actually prefer David Lee Roth's version because I love the backing vocals. Carl Wilson and I are they all on it, or is it just?
I think it's just Carl. Yeah,
it's just Carl. But those vocals to me are stronger than the Beach Boys. And I think I had read that Brian was never really happy with the final result of California Girls. It was too rushed. It was too, he didn't quite get it right. And I think it shows because I'm expecting those full vocals in that song, and you're not really getting that.
Yeah, you're getting Mike.
You're getting Mike,
and East Coast girls are
right.
very nasal,
and it's very slow.
Yeah,
like when he sings, like the music not so much, but like when he kicks when the vocal kicks in. Well, you're expecting more punch to it, more.
Yeah, he's kind of dragging it a little bit.
Yeah. So I know that. I mean, I had read that. I think it was in the biography of the Beach Boys. Like at that time, like in '89, I was getting. That's when I really got into Brian, and that was a great book. I forget who wrote it, but it was such a that's what got me into this stuff. Like I was like, at that point we were both into the singer songwriter producer thing. And of course we mention them often. They're contemporaries, but but yeah, I mean it's great to get into somebody who could take us back, and then you end up okay, now I understand the influence. It's like
and it's strange, like people go through periods or eras, right? People, that was my Beatles period. That was my Grateful Dead period. That was my Doors period. That was my, whatever period. I've never heard anybody say that was my Beach Boys period. Like you never hear people say they were into the Beach Boys, like deeply.
Right.
Like, yeah, I love the Beach Boys. Oh yeah, but you never hear people say, "Oh, that was," I had a Beach Boy. You had one, I had one, and a couple of other people I know had. But you never, overall, you hear, "Oh, that was my Beatles period. That's all I was listening to."
Yeah,
Grateful Dead. Oh my God, all I listened to was the Dead, or whatever. Almost any other band, but you never hear people say, "Oh, that was my Beach Boys period."
Mm-hmm. No, I agree,
and I don't think they get that. Yeah, I don't think they get that.
A lot of people equate it with I think, maybe they're, it's the touring band that they're still out there.
The jukebox.
The jukebox thing where it's just, what is it? Just 3 members are left at this point, and it's not even the real Beach Boys anymore, but it's like, and they see that as like, these guys are washed up kind of thing, but they people don't realize the brilliance of what they did.
Yeah,
not just Brian, but collectively too at the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, because they did have to soldier on, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But there actually is one song that's not on this list, strictly by the nature of when it was released. We're not allowed to have Good Vibrations on this list because Good Vibrations came out after Pet Sounds. Yeah. So for people who are going to say, "Well, why didn't they say Good Vibrations?" It is an amazing song. It came out after Pet Sounds, though. It was kind of the epitome. And the high point of the mania too, with the endless sessions, endless cuts, endless re-records, overdone and looking for that perfection. So, Good Vibrations won't be on this list just because it came out afterwards. And that was that was their second number one.
Yeah.
And then after that, the well ran dry. And the reason why we're not talking about Beach Boys post 66 also is because they were a vastly different band. They didn't know what they were, honestly. I mean, we could talk a little bit about it because it'll be interesting for people that want to dive into that. If you're not into this and you're like, I don't like the surf stuff.
It's a very interesting period. They were leaning into the psychedelia, 67, 68. They were kind of honing in on that.
And folksy too. Like they didn't have without Brian Wilson, they kind of didn't have a direction. He was their leader, and then he checked out. And it's like, well, what do we do? What are we? It was almost like an identity crisis. Like, what are the Beach Boys without Brian Wilson at the helm? What are they? And they put out like a lot of I have their whole discography, like all that stuff, and it's all good. And it's all very interesting, but they were just kind of trying to figure out what they were because they weren't a beach. That stuff had left them. They had, by 68, 69, they were already called an oldies band because that revolution had happened, political, social, all those things had happened. And the Beach Boys were seen as a relic of that.
Yeah.
So they were trying to understand how do we be relevant? What does it mean to be relevant? What does the music mean? they put out, stuff like Wild Honey and Friends and Sunflower in 2020. I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
They were still prolific. They had Do It Again. They had to actually do a throwback song to kind of get back on the charts. Like that was like, they kind of re-entered the charts with Do It Again, but that was in the late 60s, it was kind of, and Mike Love was always that purveyor of kind of like, this is where our bread and butter is, is this old stuff. And Brian was more of, no, we got to kind of, he saw like the handwriting on the wall with the Beatles. He saw how they were progressing. It was like, that's the future. It's not just to keep doing the same thing,
right, but
to keep moving forward and push the envelopes and maybe you'll fail, but if you're going to fail spectacularly, right? You're going to, you'll go down big, as opposed to that touring jukebox that they became, which I think they did that a little early in their career, to be honest, not to get too far into the Beach Boys, but
no,
they became a tour, like as early as mid 75, they became a touring jukebox already. They were already leaning heavily on the oldies.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I think that kind of
in the 80s, I saw them 3 times, without Brian. Just on a whim. And they were like, I think they toured I saw them with Chicago at one point at Jones Beach. Wishing You Were Here.
So that must have been without Peter Cetera too. So you're missing like the two main guys in each band.
Right. Yeah. But it's still brilliant though. I recall when they did that song, I was
Wishing You Were Here.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Track.
Yeah. It is that they had that was like mid 70s, maybe 75, 76, somewhere around there. Chicago teamed up
and
with
that's the Robert Lamb vocal, that dry, like that low.
No, that's Terry Kath.
Is it Terry Kath singing it?
Yeah,
really?
Terry Kath sings "Wishing You Were Here."
I had no idea.
Yeah,
wow, I thought that was Robert Lamb.
No, that's Mr. Terry Kath. There's a video. They did like a New Year's Eve thing. There's a video on YouTube. There's a New Year's Eve concert. They're all wearing tuxes, Chicago, and Terry Kath is wearing the tux.
Okay.
And they do, and the Beach Boys are there, and they do "Wishing You Were Here." And Terry Kath he's actually playing the bass, oddly enough, and Peter Cetera is playing the guitar. On that concert, that show, whatever. It's probably pre-recorded. But, and then the Beach Boys are behind him, like Mike Love with the fucking captain's hat that he used to wear, like that. He was already aging himself out, like even in the mid.
Making
acting like an older guy.
Like very kitschy, and the shirts and the Bahama shirts, and all that. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's exactly how they appeared. Yeah. And I saw one show with the Marshall Tucker Band.
Wow.
That's when
was Marshall or Tucker there? Or is Marshall Tucker a guy? I don't know.
And both ironically were at Jones Beach. So, that's just
I saw the Beach Boys at Jones Beach as well.
Yeah.
In the it was like the late 90s or early 2000s, and I was mystified because they sang Duke of Earl.
Okay.
The song, Duke of Earl. Like, why are the Beach Boys singing Duke of Earl when they have an endless catalog of original stuff that they could be singing? Why are they doing jukebox?
Yeah. Why
are they singing stuff from the era when you were the era?
Yeah.
Right. And that's Mr. Michael Love.
Mm-hmm.
His take on what
sensibilities
should be. Yeah, it was just kind of.
He was very much he got along very well with Brian's dad, didn't he?
Murray.
I mean, Murray was the one like pushing, like we got to do the surfing stuff. You got to, and Mike was very much there, right, in that camp. Like,
he was all for. That's where the money is. I mean, again, you got to put yourself back in that.
Yep.
Back in that time, look at 62, 63, 64. Rock and roll wasn't even 10 years old yet. It was still a fad. Mm-hmm. Being a musician of that type, probably it wasn't seen as a career, right? Unless you were Elvis, unless you were somebody really big, but it wasn't seen as something that people do.
Yeah, sustainable. And
so I can understand from one point of view of, well, let's keep cranking this stuff out because this is what we're making money with, and we don't know when this is. I'm going to have to go work at a gas station,
right?
Like we don't know where the bottom is. So I can understand that, but there was this whole other creative thing that was going on, right? The Beatles were changing, and other groups were changing the notion that it's not just rock music, it's not long-haired rebellious stuff, and it really wasn't. Changing the notion of this is a creative outlet, this is art. It can be artistic, it can have meaning.
Yeah.
We can change that. We can elevate this stuff. It doesn't have to mean elevate, meaning it's still rock and roll, but we can change how we, produce it, arrange it, what sensibilities we bring to it. And that's where Brian was. So I can understand where Mike was. Is like, well, let's not mess with the formula because this is working. This is what makes us money. And we want to continue to make money. Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that attitude. And I suppose wanting to protect yourself, but that's the difference between that and someone who's an artist or doing things for artistic. That's probably the starkest difference between the two is one looking at it from a business standpoint, which again, there's nothing wrong with, but then the other looking at it from an artistic standpoint, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this kind of music anymore. I have other things I want to express and different ways I want to express them. And it's important to me and to get these feelings out. So that's kind of the the early Beach Boys stuff. Hopefully we've piqued your interest. We'll put this stuff into a playlist and we'll throw it on Spotify. And if there's ones you want to add to it, by all means add to it, but keep it before 66. That's what we got to do. We'll do a separate one for, the Manson years with the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
The whole other story, people don't know how entrenched the Beach Boys were into that whole Manson story. Like people don't understand. They were very close to everything that happened there, especially Dennis Wilson. It was kind of, he was so terrified. He didn't even want to testify at the Manson trial because he was terrified of Manson because he had connected with him. The Beach Boys actually did a Manson song, a song that Manson wrote. It's on it's called Never. They actually retitled it and they took his name off of it and they rewrote the lyrics, but it's called Never Learn Not to Love. It's on, I forget what album it's on, but it's on one of their late 60s albums.
Wow.
So yeah, interesting. That's just a whole other interesting story
stuff.
about believe it or not, the Beach Boys and Manson. That's not what you want to be known for in the late 60s.
Right.
Maybe go back to the surfing music because that's not the right choice. That's, that's not the way to go with Charlie and his, and his family. So, I think that's going to do it, Eric. I think we've given people something to chew on and some different stuff. There's some hits in there, but then there's some other tracks that I think are emblematic of what we love about the Beach Boys. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Like I said, I just love the fact that we could agree on everything and not agree on, it's that we don't agree, but it's like I love that we have different points of view on certain songs and how it makes us feel individually. But that's what this is all about, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
It is. And we thank everybody for taking the journey with us. Again, go check this kind of stuff out. It's easy listening. The weather's getting nice as of the recording of this.
Yeah,
it's perfect to put, and that's part of the thing is this California dream that they were purveying and selling. And it works. It gets you it gets you in a mood. This is stuff that it's happy music. It's good time music. Some of it gets a little serious, but it's all stuff that's relatable to relationships and things that all of us have been through. There are a lot of universal themes in there, that Brian sings about, and he sings it like no one else can. The guy had the voice of an angel. Unfortunately, he's not doing well these days. I'm afraid things aren't going well for him. But we certainly wish him the best. I've seen him almost as more times than I've seen anybody, I think. So happy that I've gotten the opportunity to see him live, and I'm happy that I was able to kind of be into him and into them at a time when he was. Really touring like 20 years ago. He was like, in full on, and it was great stuff. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of 3324 Podcast. Hit us up on Facebook and Instagram. We're there. We can continue the conversation there. Share some of the songs you like. Like I said, we'll make a Spotify playlist and we'll put all this stuff on a playlist and it'll continue to grow. We can crowdsource it with your help, and we certainly appreciate your help with it. So, that'll do it. Like we've been saying recently, Eric will be glued to that comfy couch until our next episode, and I'll be here in the green IKEA hard chair, anxiously waiting for the next episode so I can get up out of this chair. I've got like a purple cushion, purple mattresses. I have the purple cushion on it, which really helps. It's really good.
There you go.
But otherwise, this sturdy green IKEA chair is going to be here next week as we await another time when we could talk again. So for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.